Ducati's Hypermotard 950 has always had a reputation as a ridiculously fun bike to ride, but what if you can't afford the £12,495 starting price, let alone the 16 grand for the SP version? Well, it looks like another option might be on the way in the form of a smaller capacity single cylinder version that's been spotted out testing in these pictures. So in this video, we'll go over absolutely everything that we know about it so far ahead of its expected launch in the next few weeks. Now, the current Hypermotard 950 is powered by their punchy 937cc Testa Stretta L twin, and it makes a healthy 114 horsepower up at 9,000 RPM, and it's got a very lively, aggressive throttle map that goes a long way to give this bike its reputation as a bit of a hooning machine. So it's perhaps a little bit of a surprise to see that this new Spied bike gets a single cylinder engine, which is something Ducati haven't had in their lineup since the super mono race bike of the 1990s. But it makes sense in this application, a supermoto style bike, and its existence has been all but confirmed by type approval documents filed recently in the US. They show that it will most likely be a smaller 659cc unit with 4 valves and liquid cooling. That should make it a direct competitor for KTM's super popular 690 SMC, which they call the Street Slayer. These are a proper blast to ride. I've tried the Gas sister brand version, and surely that'll be a bit of a target in terms of performance for Ducati. The 690 single in these bikes makes 74 horsepower at 8,000 RPM and 73.5 Nm of peak torque at 6,500, and it might not sound like a huge amount by road bike standards, but remember, it tips the scales at less than 150 kilograms wet, so it's still pretty flipping quick. That's exactly where I'd expect this new Ducati single to end up, somewhere around that 75 horsepower mark. And the launch of this new single cylinder engine is interesting because it opens up the opportunity to use it in other styles of bike, like perhaps a large scale off-roader to go up against KTM's 690 Enduro R. Onto the chassis, and while a lot of it is covered up by the plain testing bodywork, you do get the occasional peep of a steel trellis frame and subframe, which is right in line with the 950. Where it does diverge though is the swing arm. The 950 Hypermotard gets a single sider, which is a really nice design feature and gives it a bit of that exotic Italian look, but I'd expect this one to be built more down to a price, and so it gets a more basic double-sided aluminium swing arm. On the suspension front, naturally it sits pretty tall, being a supermoto style bike, and the gold anodized upside down fork at the front and the yellow spring on the shock with the gold reservoir perhaps hints that we're looking at some pretty nice Öhlins kit here. Maybe they'll offer this bike in 2 specs like the 950, so you've got a standard model that gets more basic components, and then also the SP sitting above it that gets the really trick fancy stuff. Now, there's no close-up to show if there's any adjustability on the fork or shock, but on a more basic version I'd probably expect not. On an SP, I would expect so. Braking looks to be from Brembo with a single disc up front as opposed to the twin disc of the 950, and it's a radially mounted monoblock 4-pot caliper. There's a single pot Brembo at the rear too, and to be honest, you wouldn't expect anything less from a Ducati, even if it is a 650 single. Wheels are 17 inches at each end, which is par for the course for a supermoto like this, and they're shod with Pirelli's excellent Diablo Rosso 4s, which are a nice sporty street tire that they fit to plenty of their other street bikes like the Monster. The rear does look a little bit skinnier than the big 180 section on the 950 though, but that is to be expected with less power, and actually it might help to make it feel a little bit more flickable and nimble. Ergonomically speaking, this will be a tall bike. The 950 it'll sit below in the lineup, starts at 870mm and it goes up to 890mm for the SP version, which will put fear in the hearts of many a vertically challenged biker like myself. They're well out of reach for a lot of people, especially if you like to be able to flat foot it, but then again, a supermoto is never going to be for everyone's taste or physical stature. Now, the 690 SMC, also being the main competitor, sits at 890mm as standard, and so it'd be unlikely to expect anything lower than about 870 with this new 659, although you might be lucky enough to get a lowering kit or low seat in the accessories catalogue. Once you're up there though, these bikes can actually be super comfortable. I mean, yes, the seat can be a bit narrow and firm, but the bars are typically wide and turn upright and there's always plenty of space down to the foot pegs. You just need to make sure you keep moving so you don't need to get a foot down. Now on this test bike, I'm not seeing any provision for a passenger, and to be fair, it's not going to be your first choice of like a 2-up tourer, but on the 950, the passenger pegs sort of extend up from the rider's peg hangers, and so perhaps we'll see some here once the bike is in its final production form. The seat looks decent enough for 2 anyway. Now onto the tech, and I'd certainly expect the usual suspects like throttle maps, traction control, ABS, and a quick shifter. The KTM gets all that stuff, and so you'd want it to at least match it like for like. But one thing I will say about the KTM is it's a little bit basic in the cockpit with a super simple LCD display, which does make it feel a bit bare bones. I mean, it does sort of fit with the dirt bike with road wheels image, but I can't help but feel that Ducati like to position themselves a little bit above the competition. Now this test bike has some sort of makeshift speedo on the go, so we can't get any insight there, but on the finished bike I'd almost certainly be expecting a TFT display with phone connectivity and that sort of stuff, which will probably help justify paying a little bit more than the competition. As for the styling, well, there's plenty in common with the 950 to give it that sort of family vibe. You've got a similar headlight shape and of course the beak at the front, and there's also the twin underseat exhaust at the back despite being powered by a single cylinder engine. It also probably won't surprise you to learn that there's been a red version spotted out testing as well, but hopefully they offer something a bit more punchy and graphical alongside that red version, because the Supermoto image deserves something a bit more lively as well. I really like what they've done with the 950 SP, and I really like the RVE version, which uses an almost neon red. So yeah, hopefully something else like that on offer too. Now this test bike looks pretty close to completion with all the lighting in place and the license plate and all that stuff. It's definitely not a completely rough test mule, but more so looks like it's close to done, just without the paint. So I'm hoping we'll get the full announcement with Ducati's run of world premieres in the next few weeks. Price wise, well, like I say, the 950 starts at 12.5 grand, so you'd want it to be well below that, and the KTM 690 comes in at £9,799 in the UK, so I think probably around the 10 grand mark sounds about right. As always though, I'd love to know what you think of it, so do let me know down in the comments below. Does it look like an enticing new direction for Ducati, or should they just stick to the V-twins and V4s? Let me know what you think, and if you're new here and you want to see more of the latest motorcycle news right here on YouTube, then do please hit subscribe if you've not already. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next one.